Hi, it's Lee again. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some things that have been going on in my head recently. Um, so I actually took kind of one of those personality tests that you often see online. I know those are not always necessarily accurate, but they're fun to do from time to time. But I took one that talks about attachment styles. And attachment styles, from what I'm aware of, is it describes, and this is more of a theory than a fact, describes how somebody interprets their environment based on three major styles: anxious, not stable. There's something else. Secure. That's it. Anxious, secure, and avoidant. And I tend to be of the anxious variety. Particularly, this test says I am anxious, preoccupied. And I think that describes me very well because I live in my head very, very often. So I often think about what other people think about me. And that is part of the issue, and those are some of the things that I need to get over. But I'm going to kind of go over the points that it says about me in this quiz. So, first says, you love connecting deeply. Yes. You're very attuned to other people's needs. Sometimes I don't always know what a person's needs are because either they don't say it clearly enough or I'm missing some signal somewhere. But usually I would say yes. I do pay attention to a lot of people's faces. If I see that they like frown, then I tend to get really anxious about that then, and then question myself about what did I say that made them do that. But that's just, one of my issues. And you value being in long-term relationships. Yes, I would prefer a long-term relationship instead of say like, friend with benefits or something shorter or fleeting. I'm not the kind of person to use sex as entertainment. Sex to me is a way to bond with a person. So if I am doing that with someone, it's either because I'm extremely attracted to them or I feel some sort of emotional connection and I want to know that person more. So usually the goal for me in having sex in general is to understand that person better and to get closer to them, to know them better. So not everybody feels that way about sex, and that is something that has been hard for me to understand in some people. If you can connect your body with another person, how are you able to easily put away your emotions? I mean, I don't blame people necessarily for that. I don't hold it against people for being able to do that, but it's just something that I find extremely difficult to do. If I'm physically connected with a person, I'm going to have feelings. It's impossible for me to not have feelings towards a person, whether that just be, you know, me kind of cozying up to them a little bit more or even feeling emotions of love in some ways. But, the person's behavior and reaction to me will also determine what I do because my feelings might crumble if they don't reciprocate the same feelings or something similar, or express an interest in getting to know me. Now, it says, but in your relationships, these things can make you feel anxious. You worry that the person you trust may leave you. I think this is more of a background worry for me. It's not something that I actively worry about all the time when I'm with someone, but sometimes whenever I get into an argument or have some sort of conflict with a person that I care about, I do worry that they may separate themselves or put distance between myself and them. So, yeah. You feel intense panic when you sense your loved one is pulling away. Panic. I don't know if I would characterize it as panic necessarily, but anxiety for sure. Um, ultimately, I don't want people to leave me, and I want people to stay close to me, especially if I'm in love with them. But I don't really feel intense panic necessarily. I think I feel more pressure, I guess you could say. It's not to the level of panic, but there is pressure to perform, so to speak. And that's kind of I guess, the trap that I run myself into, is that I I try to please people because I want to be loved and accepted. And that is something that I have to work on. You overanalyze your partner's interactions for how much they are or aren't loving you. I think this is probably one of the things, probably one of the traits of myself that I need to work on the most. Because there is some sort of anxiety about that whenever, like, if I'm texting a person that I like and our conversations go in an intimate direction and we start, sharing intimate messages or even pictures, things like that. That's, intimate things that partners would like to do, even from afar. But sometimes it does make me feel anxious when somebody doesn't reciprocate that. Because, like, oftentimes whenever I give those types of messages or images, my goal is to show how passionately I feel for that person, and how much I want that person. And my hope is, that maybe they will send something back in return. It doesn't always have to be that transactional. And I don't necessarily want it to be, because sometimes I just, want to share my feelings just as they are. But does become a time to where, like, after it goes for so long and not getting kind of the same things back all the time, it does wear on you a bit, because when you first meet somebody, there's a high level of intensity. There's so much emotion, and both of you are trying to be on the best behavior, performing for one another. Essentially, that's kind of what happens with two people in a relationship. They end up performing for one another, and so the first time you meet them, you're not really seeing the real person. And I've fallen into this a few times. And it kind of happened in my last encounter, with a friend of mine, and it was very disorienting for me, because the first time we met, very intense, very passionate, and we seemed to have a mutual interest in one another. Then the second time we meet, almost nothing. Of course, there were some emotional things there that were going on that, changed how he may have been feeling or wanted to express himself towards me. Or I don't know if necessarily he could be honest about his feelings with me or what, but there was some sort of internal conflict going on with him that was preventing him from wanting to do that with me the second time that we met. And then we kind of talked about it a little bit, and then we continued a physical relationship here and there, and it was just kind of like very erratic, very all over the place, no predictability about it. And that made me, part of it was our lack of communication, our inability to communicate clearly our wants and needs. And like I've said before, I need physical contact. It is not a want, it is a need. If someone is unable to touch me, I cannot have a relationship with them. If somebody is unable to, have the patience for moments of intimacy, that stretch on for longer than a few minutes, cuddling, I can do that for hours if a person will let me. I don't want to restrict somebody to the bed all day, but that's something that I value in a relationship, someone being able to do for me. And I enjoy being able to do that for someone. And I like to do things like give massages and, just be very physically present and intimate. Presence, I think, is something that I need because a few times that I've been with guys, it's once you have sex, the clothes come back on, the lights come back on, we're back to watching TV, playing a video game, whatever. I don't like that. That is the least romantic way of having sex with anybody. If the clothes come immediately back on. Mm-mm. That's for me a no-go. Because part of sex is not the act itself. It is the intimacy of laying and exposing yourself with another person, being, physically and even to some degree spiritually connected with one another. That's what it is for me. And that is so highly important to me that if I'm unable to have that, I'm going to feel very unloved unless there's a very good reason for it. And unless that person can assure me that they do love me in some way, I can navigate those situations the best I can if the person is communicating with me verbally. But if there's both no verbal or physical communication, I'm going to be so that's probably gonna put me in a panic. And oftentimes I've exploded in anger towards people because they haven't been clear with me. I would prefer hard, brutal honesty over stonewalling or perpetual silence. Yeah, I don't know. It's a feeling that I have difficulty explaining to people because not everyone feels the same intensity that I do. Not everybody experiences sex the way I do. Some people do, some people don't. And I guess I just haven't really run into the people that vibe with me in the same way when it comes to that. So that's what I'm working on finding eventually in a relationship. But before that, I need to work on myself, of course. Well, thank you for listening again, and I hope you find happiness and love in your life. So seek out love and light in your life. Thank you.